Alright, very warm welcome back again. So today we want to talk about the MIDI tracks, or what MIDI tracks can do with this instrument track, and also we want to talk about the audio and sampler track functionality. So I've loaded up performance from last time, and what we've seen when we opened this instrument was that we have 15 more slots to think of here. I can load any other instrument on each of these slots if I'm just clicking on one of those and then maybe choosing one of the patches again. In this case, just let's randomly choose this one, double click again and load this in here. And then we have basically 3 instruments playing in parallel, but they are not actually playing in parallel as of right now, because this instrument here is routed to channel number 1, which means that the sound we are getting is basically the sound that this first channel introduces. All right. If I'm changing this to the second one now, we should hear this sound coming out of here. So let's just start with number 1 here and play back. Just this portion, and then change to channel 2, and you should hear something different. All right. Now the thing is, you can choose any of these channels here, but if you want to if you want to have multiple of them going on at the same time, you can probably do this with any. But in this case, any again only works for the very first one. So what do you want to do if you want all of these 3 working in parallel? Well, one thing you could do is basically add MIDI channels to this channel. So if I have this channel activated, going with a right click and then adding MIDI tracks, in this case I want to add 2 of those, give them maybe a number, adding these tracks, then you can see that the output from these 2 MIDI channels is basically the instrument that we have created here, but the channels are channel 2 and channel 3 here, which means if you look on this side here, you can see that there is already a pre-selection of the instruments that we are going to use when we are using one of these channels. So if I'm now just maybe remove, let's do it this way. I'm going to remove this, so just marking and then hitting delete on my keyboard, and now we want to basically record a performance with all of these instruments at the same time. I do not know if this sounds well, but let's just do it. So the only problem is, if I would hit record now, I would only record this track here, which is not what I want, but I want every single track. So one thing I could do is just enable record on every other track, or I can just get rid of those and mark them by hitting Control again and marking all of these tracks. So I have the recording option activated on all of them. And if I now hit record and play something, again I have my MIDI keyboard attached here, you hear that first you see that it has been recorded on every single track, and then you hear, if I'm playing this back, that we basically have different patches loaded for each of these channels. I can also solo and mute them if I want to. So maybe let's just hear this track, or maybe just hear this track. Right? So this is one way you can use your MIDI information. Of course, I could have also gone ahead and just duplicate this instrument or just load another one, but especially if you have like many instruments and you want to use all of those, it can get a little bit CPU heavy if you have to create an instrument for every single one of those. So you can just use this instrument as your blueprint, and then choose the MIDI tracks in order to use the other patches that you have loaded in your instrument here. Now, this is the first thing. The other thing we can talk about are audio and sampler tracks, and we're going to do this now. I just hit Shift plus Del to just get rid of all of these all of these tracks. And what we want to do now is just basically choose a loop. Don't know which one, maybe something here. Not the bass one. Bass one cannot be heard everywhere. Yeah, let's just go with this one. It's just random assigning of those. I just have to make sure that should be fine. That this is not too loud for you. And maybe also deactivate a click for now. So what I've done now is basically just chose one of those and drag this into the project. This is an audio track. You can just play this back, right? You can also chop this if you want. You can cut this, split this, and glue this together again. But audio tracks in general introduce less computation power for your CPU. So if you basically have your instrument and you route this out to audio, your computer will not have to do that much computation anymore in order to reproduce the sound that you had in your instrument. So this is the one option you have, basically just using audio. But the question now is, if you have a loop that is, like in this case, patched to D sharp major, but you want to have this in E sharp major, or maybe not E sharp major, let's say F major, then the question is, how can you transform this into an F sharp major or F major or whatever key you want to have loop? And the answer basically is you can use the sampler track for this. So if I'm just right clicking on this and choose the create sampler track option here, I have the exact same loop as I have here. So if I'm just soloing this, you hear this. And if I'm now hitting the right note here, so we have the sampler track activated right now, and I'm hitting the D sharp here, you hear the exact same thing. But if I'm now hitting a different note, in this case, let's say F, you hear that this sample is pitched up to the F in this case, right? So this allows you to also think of this sampler track as a like instrument or MIDI track. So you can record with this. I'm just hitting record, and then maybe hit some notes. We have this audio loop activated at the same time, so maybe it doesn't sound that good. But if I'm now playing this back, you can hear that you have a change in the pitch, which is not possible with audio. So in this case, you can pretty easily transform your audio file into a sampler track, and then use the sampler track in order to give your performance some different characters, some other pitches, and use the audio file then as basically the trigger for the sampler track. And this basically concludes the 4 important tracks and what you can do with those. They are very powerful, so if you use them right, you can come up with some very good ideas, very decent ideas. So I suggest you take a look at those and try them out.